Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the associate editor for the Financial Times, Stephen Bush, and former Conservative Special Advisor, Salma Shah. Great to have you with us. Let's see what is on some of those front pages now. Well, The Telegraph says Britain is secretly preparing for a direct military attack by Russia amid fears that the country isn't ready for war. The Metro highlights the start of V-Day celebrations with the parade at the Royal Palace in London today. The Mirror leads on this story too, calling it a day to remember Britain's heroes 80 years on. The Mail shows a picture of the royals enjoying the festivities as thousands pack the streets around Buckingham Palace. The Express also marking the day, quoting Winston Churchill on its front page. The Financial Times writes that the French President Emmanuel Macron has condemned Donald Trump for policies that will slash billions of dollars of scientific research at American universities. On the front of The Guardian claims that Downing Street is rethinking its controversial winter fuel cut amid growing anxiety at the top of government that the policy could lose key party support from voters. The Times says the Home Office will restrict work and study visa applications from several nationalities who are the most likely to overstay and then claim asylum under Labour's plans to clamp down on visa abuse. There are concerns that thousands of jobs are at risk as Donald Trump threatens 100% tariffs on UK film and TV production. That's on the front of the Eye. And on the front of the Star, Donald Trump dressed as Darth Vader as he declares that he wants to reopen Alcatraz to put the bad guys in there. I mean, with the Darth Vader, actually, would have worked with the film industry one as well, but they went with Alcatraz. Anyway, we're joined tonight by Stephen Bush and Salma Shah. Thank you so much for being with us. So let's start with one of the Trump stories, because, you know, another day, another tariff announcement or some kind of announcement from Donald Trump. Stephen, let's start with the way that your paper covers it. U.S. threat of 100% levy on foreign films spreads alert to services-led economies, of course, including the U.K. So tell us what you make of this.
Well, so this is something I think no one saw coming anywhere in the world. And I mean, it's not, to be honest, even clear how tariffs on films would work. So to take Star Wars as an example, American film, American studio, as anyone who's watched it will have guessed, Alec Guinness, British actor, filmed on Pinewood, not too far from where we are now.
And global distribution
In global
as well.
distribution. It's like one of those things where it's just like, when does a film, particularly in the age of streaming, when does it even cross your border? So this is something which no one really expected. As our story says, one of the reasons why this is so alarming is if you are any business in services, and most British businesses in particular are, you look at this and you go, well, this is nonsense, but clearly someone around Trump is going to be in charge of making it make some form of sense. Is that sense going to be bad for my business? So what it's going to lead to is, hiring freezes in investment. It's very bad for the global film industry, not least because the global film industry is so interlinked that it's terrible news for Hollywood as well.
Yeah, and Sam, just before coming to you, I mean, we did hear, I think, from a White House spokesperson saying that, of course, the final decision had not been made and it all seemed a little bit vague, which isn't unlike Trump.
Well, yes, and also he's been hit quite hard by Wall Street and his kind of like billionaire backers who didn't like the tariffs that he put out originally. So I think whilst he might sort of shoot from the hip and talk about tariffs and 100% tariffs, I think hopefully there is a little bit of thinking going on behind the scenes, because otherwise that we are potentially looking at another climb down. We have the eyes covered it in a different way, because if he does hit us with these tariffs, there's a couple of political things that are really important to note here. This would be on top of the base case 10% tariff that it already applies to the UK. And what does it actually mean for this special relationship that we've been trying to draw and that the government keeps telling us that we have with Trump, that Starmer and Trump are actually getting on quite well? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's believable, but the creative sector is a really important sector to the UK. For the last decade, it's been one of the fastest growing sectors that we have. And as the eye details, there are lots of jobs at stake here. There's
about
growth at stake here.
200,000.
It's not insignificant. But also, the money for creative industries has largely been coming from the US with the big streamers. So there isn't any other cash, say, with public service broadcasters to step up if this does happen. And I think we actually need to think about our resilience there too.
It's that if, though, because you never know with Trump. He sort of made this announcement, there's nothing confirmed. Do you think that the film industry in the UK here will start to react to this possibility?
Well, look, the film industry here is actually in quite a lot of trouble as it is, because yes, as Salma says, it's had an awful lot of growth over recent years, but it's become incredibly dependent on Netflix, on streaming, as a cheap filming location for the United States in particular. And if you saw the most recent Batman film, and you've ever been into inner London or to Liverpool, you'll have gone, oh, Gotham looks a bit like Liverpool and looks a bit like inner London. And so much of the core of our very important industry is dependent on being interlinked with the US film industry. I think everyone who worked in services thought, oh, it's going to be a bad time, but we're OK because no one knows how to tariff onto services. And I think if we see a spread of fear away from manufacturing, both complex and simple, to services, then that gets really very dicey for the British economy.
I mean, we're sort of seeing this impact between the US and policies from Trump on sectors that you wouldn't have thought in Europe and the EFT as well. This story coming from the French president and also Ursula von der Leyen. Macron condemns Trump's assault on universities as Europe lures scientists. Now, the Trump administration is basically seeking to cut federal funding from several universities for a variety of reasons. And I guess Macron and von der Leyen are trying to maximise the potential that this could create in Europe?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that we all should be, because there is going to be, or at least there's mooted to be, an exodus of talent from the US. I'm very personally, as Stephen knows, excited about the potential of Beyonce and Jay-Z coming to the Cotswolds, which I think would be quite exciting for British culture. But nonetheless, there is this idea that actually when we all thought that Brexit was going to create a brain drain, and it has to a certain extent, and with our tax regime being where it is, we have lots of wealth that's exiting the UK. Actually, it's not just an opportunity for the French and the Europeans or the EU, it is actually an opportunity for us. Could we be attracting people to our university sector, which itself is also struggling? So there is going to be this sort of competitiveness about where all this wonderful global talent and, more importantly, US money will go.
Stephen, can you see the UK capitalising on this like Europe is trying to?
Well, the UK should capitalise on this. It's got the advantage of a shared language. It's got a very strong university sector. I can't remember if Salma were you in government during when David Cameron was always talking about the global race?
Yeah,
and you know,
I was also there when we stopped talking about the global race.
Yeah, okay, although people stopped talking about it because lots of people didn't understand what it meant and they were like, isn't the global race humans? But he was actually onto something really important, which is we are in a global race to survive in an ever-changing economy. I think a problem is that the current government is so concerned about reform, so worried about anything which looks like being open to immigrants, so reluctant to do anything which might involve changing some of their promises on taxes, that I think they are not going to seize this opportunity. And instead, if anything, the university sector is going to get smaller, not larger under them, which is a huge missed opportunity because the UK really is well placed to take advantage of this.
Just finally, it is interesting that Macron is so, welcoming, that he is willing to sort of put himself out there and say, hi, we are open. We don't really see other European leaders doing that. And I think that there is that kind of infection, the same way with Sakir, across Europe. But interesting that Macron and the EU leaders, as an entity, are making that play.
He was at the Sorbonne, of course,
Yes.
making the statement. OK, Stephen, you mentioned reform. And, of course, over the weekend, we've all been discussing the fallout from the local elections. So let's look at this story in The Guardian. Number 10, to rethink the fuel payment cut. Basically, after those local election losses, and a lot of people are quite concerned about them in Westminster. Salma, first of all, what do you make of the story? Do you think it's likely that they will, or should they?
So I have no insight from behind the scenes in Number 10, but it seems plausible, given the reaction to the fact that lots of councillors, Labour councillors who lost their seat, and indeed Tory ones, have said that actually the winter fuel payment issue was something that was really high up on the doorstep. So it can't be ignored because it has what we call in Westminster cut through. It really impacted people at a very difficult time. So you can understand how there's going to be a reaction to that. Whether, as this story details, whether that means that it's going to be a full reversal of the policy or whether it's going to be a change to the threshold at which you can claim winter fuel payment, that remains to be seen. But I don't expect that we'd see that before the autumn statement when the Treasury has gotten its sort of money in and money out stabilised. And that's always going to be the question, how does one pay for it?
Stephen?
Yeah, look, Keir Starmer's setup has never not panicked in the face of an electoral reverse. We saw that when they were in opposition, when they lost the Uxbridge by-election. We saw that in 2021 when they lost the Hartlepool by-election. Now, I guess there are two ways of seeing it. One, you could go, well, after all that, they did still win a majority. The other is you could go, these guys are quite brittle and they will continue to panic.
But this was their first sort of divisive policy, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, speaking personally, I think it would be a disaster for the government, having also done this, to be honest, quite sensible thing that most Conservatives agreed was a good idea privately, that you shouldn't have a situation where you're continually sending an ever-shrinking benefit to an ever wider number of people, regardless of whether or not they really need it. Does Paul McCartney really need a winter fuel payment?
So raising the threshold presumably will take care of that.
I think, you know, raising the threshold, I think you can sort of defend in policy terms, but I think if you're doing it because you've lost a local election, which is a thing governments usually do, including governments which go on to be re-elected, I think it then does raise questions about, OK, well, why should any MP defend a difficult decision you make? Or does this government actually have it to stick to a plan?
But it does also beg the question, though, as to if changing the threshold was an option, why the Chancellor didn't take that option and why Number 10 didn't push for that potential option, which was not a total, you know, abolition of it. And it wasn't a free-for-all, but it was a measured understanding of what we actually needed. So it goes back to that issue of whether Labour actually had a plan when they came into government.
OK. We're going to have to leave it there for now. Coming up, the Prime Minister is preparing for an attack by Russia. We'll discuss that and the other front pages after the break.
Trying to get people to disperse.
What Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me.
Is that your opinion?
It is. It is.
They were serious, coordinated attacks.
It's an entire generation that will have to contend with the horrifying impacts of this conflict.
The number of patients is increasing.
It's been quite some day.
Hey, what country are you from?
the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country?
You've gone viral.
I've ever had such a reaction.
It's just incredible.
Since the Oval Office meeting, have they reached out to you?
If Ukraine asks for help and its allies decide to help, then that's the end of it.
Criticism of you, the president, is banned. How is this a fair election?
Historic day here today.
Beth Rigby from Sky.
You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
There could be some more painful decisions to come.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky security and defence editor. I've covered Russia's full-scale war since it began, witnessing the terror and the trauma.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Martha Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent. Sky News, get the full story first, free, wherever you get your news.
We're rolling. Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me in the studio, Associate Editor for the Financial Times, Stephen Bush, and former Conservative Special Advisor, Salma Shah. Let's go to the front page of The Telegraph. This story here, the headline, Prime Minister prepares for an attack by Russia. Basically, both that, the government is thinking about getting a contingency plan. But bottom line is, Salma, we're not ready for it if it does happen. We're not prepared.
Yeah, it's true. So the one thing that I found quite interesting about this is that the contingencies haven't been looked at since 2005. So this is a plan that, as it currently stands, is 20 years out of date. So on one hand, one is quite pleased that they are doing it. But the nature of cyber will have changed, the nature of attacks will have changed, targets will have changed in terms of the way that the Russians are thinking about it. Do we know whether they're necessarily going to fire missiles? Are they more interested in communications infrastructure, like undersea cables, for example? So there are all those kinds of questions that need to be asked and answered. And I also think that, without wanting to sort of scaremonger, Stephen and I were having a conversation as we were reading this, sort of saying, is it one of those that's just a routine thing that, the newspaper's getting very, very excited about? Or is it genuinely because actually there is something sort of shifting in the world and the threat picture is changing? And I, for one, would welcome a lot more coverage on this kind of story to understand what that looks like. Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, look, we should be really aware that one of the very difficult legacies that this government has had to inherit is it was in 2006 that the Russian government killed on British soil Alexander Litvinenko, which should have been the sign that we needed to completely change our approach to defending ourselves and to take the threat from that country in particular more seriously. In then 2014, we had the invasion of Crimea, and we've had many, many warning lights, and now I think this is a really important scoop by the Telegraph, Tony Diver, and the Salisbury killings. Which, I mean, I think to be fair to Theresa May, I think the Salisbury killings were the first time that the British government did finally look at those warning lights and go, oh, God, we should probably do something. But with the exception of the response in 2018, our response to this problem has, for most of the last 14 years, essentially been to go, oh, well, that seems a bit difficult, and to press the snooze button. We can't do that anymore. This is going to be one of the big challenges for Labour in the spending review, because they're going to have to find more money for it than the money that they've already found. And, of course, people were expecting them to come in and fix public services, not for them to have to come in and fix national defence.
Do you think they are taking it seriously now, though?
I think rhetorically they are. I think it remains to be seen whether or not they've got the right policy agenda to fix it. MOD procurement, as Salma knows much better than I do, has been a mess for a very long time. Do they really have a plan to grip that? It remains to be seen.
And we also, actually, just on that, they've modelled a cyber attack scenario that would lead to civilian fatalities, a massive hit on our economy. And if that has been modelled, then I would like to understand what's the policy coming out of that? What is the mitigant that is coming out of that? Because it's all well and good knowing what the threat is, but dealing with the threat is a different question entirely.
Yeah, and it's interesting how, there's been talk of war over the past, year, 2 years or so, and it's now coinciding with the celebrations that we've seen today, marking the 80th anniversary of VE Day, or at least, the 4 days commemorating that leading up to Thursday. So the front page of the Daily Mail, thank you. A beautiful picture there. Of course, thousands of people lining the streets earlier today. And then let's just pull up the Mirror as well. A beautiful picture there of the fly past, a day to remember. Salma, to you, I mean, we saw beautiful pictures. There were a lot of poignant moments, though. The balcony, for example, for the first time for such a big event without the Queen, that really was the link to 1945, because she'd been on the same balcony then.
Yes, and what's fascinating is, yes, as you say, first major war commemoration where the late Queen isn't present. Lots of references to her, not necessarily in the paper coverage tomorrow, but certainly in broadcast today about her time. And it is, one has to start accepting that living history is dying. Our connection to that past is being removed. And, you know, at the next commemoration, will we even have a single veteran remaining that can teach us or tell us about what that time was like, what it was about? And the significance of that is once living memory fades, and once, you know, our living connection to the past dissipates, are we destined to start making the same mistakes again? Because we have no lessons from history.
Stephen, forgive me, we've got 20 seconds.
I think I'm just going to observe what a wonderful photo by Mark Large it is on the page of the Mail. I think, actually, in general, the Mail's front, I think, is the kind of thing which deserves and almost certainly will win at least one award. I think it really sums up the world that was saved and created and made safe on VE Day. I think it's a really beautiful picture, a beautiful composition. And I think, yeah, Sam was exactly right about the moment we're at in, but I think let's just contemplate what a beautiful picture that is.
Yeah, it was amazing images all day. Stephen, Sam, we're going to have to leave it there. I'll see you in the next hour. Thank you so much. And now let's take a quick look at the weather.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, a northerly flow means the next couple of days will be on the cool side, but it will be mainly dry, and it will turn warmer towards the end of the week, but it will be a mostly dry and sunny start tomorrow.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.